Today's guest was the 2008 National League Rookie of the Year and starting catcher for the NL All-Stars that same season. Today we catch up with former Cubs backstop Geovany Soto. Geovany, thank you so much for sitting down with us. We appreciate it. First of all, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
That's a pleasure. It's got to be special for you to come back to Chicago and walk across that stage in opening ceremonies in front of these great fans.
Yeah, it feels awesome, to come back and do it, after my time here in Chicago, and then I was, bouncing a little bit, afterwards. But to come back and to see the fans and to see the reaction, that's pretty cool.
Now, you have a birthday tomorrow, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Happy
yes, sir.
birthday.
Thank you so much.
What do you have planned here in the city for
I'll
that?
probably go have some fun with the family, go eat with the family and stuff, and, enjoy the snow for like 2 days, and then I'm off to the tropic, weather. But yeah, I'm enjoying it, man. I'm enjoying it.
You played elsewhere, and we'll get into that a little bit. But what's special about Chicago when you come back? What do you most look forward to about this city and this fan base?
I mean, realistically, I really feel that Chicago is one of the best, if not the best city in the whole world. I mean, it has everything that you could want, and the fans are really involved, in sports and out here. So it really feels like home. I just grew up in this organization, spent some time, in the big leagues here. So I feel like I belong.
Before you got drafted and as a child growing up in Puerto Rico, what was life like? What did you guys? Baseball is huge on that island.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was all baseball. After I was 16 years old, 17, 18, those 3 years were pretty crucial. So everything was baseball. I was going to tryouts. I was lucky enough to get invited to a lot of tryouts, and and I kind of felt that if I'm going to tryouts and stuff, it means I'm kind of good and might get considered to signing and stuff.
Who are some of your baseball heroes as a kid that you looked up to, whether they were from Puerto Rico or not?
Yeah, I got two guys, Roberto Alomar and Yvan Rodriguez. And since I was a catcher, Yvan Rodriguez is kind of like I see him, I'm starstruck. I got to play with him in 2009 World Baseball Classic, but I mean that guy, I see that guy and I kind of I get nervous, when I see that guy like a little kid.
Well, your career at that point was established already, but what did you learn from a guy like that? I mean, you say he's a childhood hero, but one of the best catchers to ever play.
Once you're around him, it's I'm in the big leagues now. I'm a professional. I see him and stuff, but I kind of paying attention to what he does, and it's unbelievable. He's so good, but yet he works so hard. It's like you have it all, but yet you're still chasing, Superman status. You know what I mean in sports. So I really respect that kind of work ethic. Out of that guy that's so good.
So you were drafted 2001.
Yeah.
11th round.
Yes.
You were a kid. Still.
Yeah, out of high school, right out of high school. I remember the draft. I was so nervous. I called a buddy of mine that he was helping a scout down in Puerto Rico. Because it wasn't televised by then. It's like, what round are you? And they were like, we're going through the 4th, the 5th, and then I just stopped calling. And they called me up and they were like, hey, the Chicago Cub, got you in the 11th round. We'll be contacting you and going to your house, shortly in a couple of days. I was ecstatic. I was excited.
What's the lead up to that like? So you said you played in showcases here and there.
Yeah, and it was weird because it ramped up quickly, and we got to go to showcases, tryouts, and little by little my name got bigger and stuff, and in the island as a prospect. It was kind of surreal. You start. It's like it starts rolling, and all of a sudden it's you're doing 2 tryouts a day. You're doing interviews for them to see mentally how are you and stuff. It's pretty cool to see as a kid, kind of see everything unfolding right on your eyes. It's pretty cool.
When the lead up to that, I mean, you have major league organizations come to you and say, hey, Geovany, we'd love to see you work out with us, or how does that work? They contact you guys, or?
Yeah, man, we go play in certain tournaments and stuff, and they have the scouts there to they accommodate them to see you play. And then right after that, they fill your information, give me your name, your address and stuff, so we can keep in contact with you. And then they start inviting you to showcases or, tryouts for certain teams. And, they call other teams to come and kind of see what's going on.
So, I mean, obviously baseball was the common denominator, but was it hard to leave home as an 18-year-old kid to come to a different country to pursue what turned into be your career?
Yeah, I mean, my whole life, I wanted to, go play baseball and go out to the States, but not until I was in the States and a couple months went by, I was like, I got a little homesick. I was like, man, it's, I gotta wait, 2 more months to go home. This is terrible, but it's just because I've never done it. After a while, you kind of, get distracted. You're working, and you kind of, get over that phase. But it was a little tough at the beginning as an 18-year-old.
You got comfortable quickly. I mean, your rookie year in 08, your first full season in the big leagues. I mean, you went nuts.
Yeah,
35 doubles, 23 home runs. I mean, you made a splash.
Yeah, it was a great season. I had a lot of guys, in the team that were really supporting me. And obviously we had, Alfonso Soriano, we had Aramis, Derek Lee. We had a lot of big hitters. And then I was in the bottom of the lineup. And they kind of, were a little careless, with me at times. And that's what I make them pay. And that, I think that's kind of what propelled my first rookie season.
You were Rookie of the Year for a first-place team that won 97 games.
Yeah, correct.
I mean, you guys had a hell of a year.
Yeah, we had a great year. I caught a no-hitter, too, as well, too.
That's right.
For Zambrano, and everything was a dream come true.
When that was going on, did it really sink in, or did you kind of realize it after the fact when you look back and say, "Oh my gosh"?
It kind of did not sink in. I was talking to Henry Blanco, and I was like, you see the scoreboard, like, what do we do? He's like, and he told me, just keep catching, just keep going, But it is a big deal, like. I'm like, oh, okay, so if I start jumping up and down, nobody's going to be like, hey, what's this kid doing, But it was special. It was special.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You had a little bit of time up in the bigs in 05, 6, and 7. Correct?
I did have like exactly September of 05, 6, and 7. And 2006, I think I had a week after the All-Star break, but did not play.
Okay.
But it was all September.
The back and forth then for those several years, what did that do to help you prepare for your first full season in 08? I mean, what did you learn going up and down that really benefited you?
Well, if you compare the minor leagues to actually the system in the big leagues, it's a little bit different. It's a big jump, mentally and kind of, physically too. It's a big jump. You see all these guys, like when I came up, I played against Barry Bonds and big names, and you're like, seeing this, and it's a little, you have to like kind of see it and kind of be there to kind of, okay, I'm used to it,
Yeah.
But it's a little shock when you kind of first come in, and see Sammy Sosa, you're like, but it's normal people, It's just you're a little in awe with everything.
What's one of the things maybe you didn't expect other than that about Major League life that you learned after you became a full-time big league player?
It's so easy to come in and be in the big leagues and play and stuff, but you get sucked into this, I'm a major leaguer, everything, life is great, life, you know what I mean? Like life is, there's no worries in the whole world and stuff, but then you lose a game and everything, it feels like your whole world's gonna crumble, It doesn't feel like in the minor leagues. In the minor leagues, it's a season, you go by, but here it's like life or death every single game, we're not here to develop anybody, we're here to win, and, that kind of mentality, that kind of shocked me a little bit.
Your first manager with the Cubs was Lou Piniella when you were?
Dusty Baker, actually.
Dusty
with those 2006
with
5.
the call-ups, yes. Into Lou, 2 of the most highly regarded managers in baseball ever. What was it like playing for those guys? Dusty, super player friendly, right?
Yeah.
Lou,
yeah.
The same, but more of a character to some extent?
He's hard on his players. He wants to win, and, I don't blame him. But, it's a little surreal. I know he managed King Griffey Jr., Ichiro, and, he's a big name guy. And to see him actually, manage and stuff and kind of working for him and having a good season in 08 for him, it was pretty special.
What was that like as a young player playing under Lou Piniella? I mean, he's an intense guy, right?
Yeah.
Take us behind closed doors.
Yeah, I remember in 2007 I was having a great year in AAA, and I got the call up, and mid September I was having a good September as well, and mid September he calls me up and he's like, hey, you're gonna be my guy for next year, and that was so surreal that he just told me next year you're gonna be my everyday catcher. I was like, oh my God, I'm good, I'm set. He just told me I don't have to go to spring training. Trying to, obviously you always want to work hard and always want to do it, but for him to just say that, it was humbling. It was an honor.
So you got, I mean, that's pretty neat. You got then a whole offseason to mentally prep for what you knew was coming.
Yeah, but then in spring training, I got to spring training, I started playing, and, I started off, in spring training games, not how I liked. And right away, he was telling Henry, hey, Henry, get ready. This kid, I don't know, you had to come in and let's go.
You or die.
Yeah, so I was like, oh my God, this could run away from me. No, I started battling and I had a great year.
Any good Piniella stories from behind the scenes that we could share?
I do have one. I remember we went to Washington after I think it was in May, early May. Went to Washington. I was having a good first month. I was hitting like 305, 302 with like 4 or 5 homers, and I was doing pretty good. That one day, first day in Washington, it was a lefty throwing like 87. Not too hard or anything. It was just I went 0 for 3 with 3 strikes. And, in my mind, I was like, oh, they got me. They got what I cannot hit, so I'm not going to hit anymore. I can't hit, me being panicking at that point. And Woody calls me up to his room, and he was like, hey, kid, it's going to be okay, just, let it go. Tomorrow it's going to be another day. Well, the next day I went 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts. And then, I was bummed, he let me alone. I went to my room. The next day game, he calls me in the office, and he said, hey, Gio, I'm gonna give you a day off here. I don't want you to break any type of records. I'm like, come on, man, I'm feeling like crap, and you're telling, but that was Lou for you, man, right there.
Did it help, though, that approach?
Yeah, I mean, I had the day off, and, mentally it's kind of discharged, and, going forward the next day and the next series, I kind of put it back together and kind of kept doing my thing.
So did you always catch? Or
yeah, I mean,
played other positions?
My whole life I was a third baseman. I grew up as a third baseman, and I knew, I was a bigger third baseman, and wasn't that athletic. I had good hands, but not a lot of range. So they were preparing me. They were like, hey, you might want to get a catcher's mitt. I was like, I'm great, and they made me throw from back to the home plate and to second base, and but I was like the second catcher, but because I was such a great third baseman until when I signed, I saw the big boys do it. I'm like, man, I suck. That's why I'm a catcher. Yeah.
But you had a good arm.
Yeah.
And who suggested that maybe you try behind the plate?
It was in Puerto Rico. It was actually the guy that signed Juan Gonzalez and Yvan Rodriguez. And, it was a guy that had a good eye, and he told me, you're going to be one of the best catchers in the big leagues. And just because I had a good transfer, I had good hands, and I moved pretty good for my size, in terms of the hands and stuff. He saw the potential, and therefore, when I was 17, 18, I was going with the idea, let's try this, because I heard from a well-known scout that, I could have a better opportunity, so I just kind of took that route.
Worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
Nobody in this room has ever caught a major league game, and like any player, you had injuries over the course of your career.
Yeah.
Tell us how physically brutal it is being a major league catcher.
Yeah, I mean, I get asked a lot of that question, and you do get used to it, but kind of not. You know what I mean? Yeah. You kind of get used to it, but it's still tiring. It takes a toll on your knees and your hands and the preparation, and you kind of get startled or you get mentally fatigued because you got to know all these scouting reports and all these stuff. But it's a great position to play. You're actually the manager inside the field. You're the one that's seeing everybody, and their positioning and the stuff. So it's an honor to play that position, because it's like the captain back there.
You alluded to the mental side of the game a little bit. I'm always fascinated by this. The baseball season's so long and so demanding and such a grind.
Yeah.
For 6 months, you essentially play every day. How do you keep an even keel through the highs and lows of a 162-game schedule?
I feel the most important thing is to have a routine. I feel that, they teach you in the minor leagues, you need to have a routine. You need to come out at whatever time you want to come out, or you need to stretch the same way. You need to do all that. I didn't get it, at first. But then, you start going to all these different stadiums, all these different crowds. And you're in a pennant race or you're not. Yeah. You go to Cincinnati in a day game where you knew you're going to win, 8-0, and it's kind of boring. Or you're going into St. Louis in a hostile environment. It's a good game. You're right there on the pennant. But if you're following the routine, it's like it gets you in a mentality like it's another game, but it gets you ready and alert. But it's just another game, just another game. You go into New York to Yankee Stadium, you do your routine, and it seems like you're in Chicago or you're in somewhere else, and you just go about it the same way. If you kind of starstruck at the field or at the players, if everything feels different, it feels like a roller coaster, and that's what you want to avoid. And you do that with your routine. Once you start, hitting, it's like, I got to do my routine. It's, it's like 6:42, and I have to go. You usually pick up those times. You don't go 6:30 or 6. You go like 6:42, just to be a little bit more ridiculous on your routine and try to be, and get it done. That way, you're mentally always doing the same stuff. So it's like you're preparing yourself you're preparing yourself for a game, but it's always the same game. You have to do your 100%. It's not like, you're not roller coasting your emotions, throughout the season.
Speaking of different ballparks and playing on the road, did you have some favorite parks you like playing in, or some of your least favorite potentially on the road?
One of my favorite fields to go, and I didn't go until quite later in my career, was Boston, because it felt just like Wrigley. It felt, with the tradition. The field is weird with the high wall and the green monster and I think it's the pesky pole.
Yes.
So it had that same feel to Wrigley and stuff, and I loved it too. I went to Yankee Stadium. I got to play there. Last year, it was 2008, the last year of they were gonna get it down, but I got to play there in the All-Star game. I got to start the All-Star game in Yankee Stadium, the old Yankee Stadium where Babe Ruth stood, and Jeter for all those years, all those championship, and it's pretty special.
What an honor!
Yeah.
You played in the league for 13 years. From 2005, say from your first major league at bat through 2017. Were there any major changes in the game that stuck out to you during that span?
One of the biggest change was the replay, or they started for home runs. Mm-hmm. It was at that point it was a little bit shocking to have somebody go into a monitor and turn around a home run, because you have so many guys that maybe they had the wrong call, but they got it.
Yeah.
One instance, I hit a ball in Cincinnati to right center field, and the fan kind of got it. It was a home run, but Joe West was in second base, and he just put his hands up like, no, that's a double. The guy reached out, and right away I was thinking, what about Jeter's homer?
Right
to right field. What happened there? Like, how come he got that homer and I can't get this one?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is it annoying, for lack of a better term, if you're a player on the field and there's a replay that takes, say, 2, 3, sometimes 3.5 minutes to look at? Or is it more of make the call, get the call correct, regardless of what it takes?
Yeah, after a while, you start understanding why they do it, and kind of you start adjusting to the replay and the system. And I'm all forward for them to get the call right. After a while, you start noticing, they can miss quite a few plays, and it's really important. So you start getting on board to the idea, might as well get the call right, and if it takes a few minutes. They've been getting a lot better, since it started to now to get pace a game. But you want to get the call right too.
I think a lot of people might not realize how important, you alluded to it already, communication is as a catcher.
Yes, correct.
You're the coach on the field. Everything's in front of you. Plus, you're working with so many pitchers, your whole starting staff and guys out of the pen. Yeah. How difficult is that to maintain good, strong relationships with these pitchers, to know that when they're on the mound, it's just you two?
Well, I mean, that kind of stuff, you have to earn it, and they see it. We have meetings, and we talk about the other hitters and the different teams coming in. And then they see the work that you're putting in, the way you handle yourself, the way you, call the stuff, and that's when you start to earn that respect. And like you said, they start respecting you, they start following you, and they start, believing in you.
You have your daughters with you here in town this weekend, and how's retired life in Puerto
It's
Rico?
awesome. It's awesome. I wake up super late, just go around on the golf cart through the whole golf course of my house, and just. I'm enjoying it, and go picking them up. I'm really enjoying the stability that I never had. I've been for the past 20 years been so hectic, just flying all over the place, being in different cities and different teams and different crowds, and it feels good to just kind of sit down for a couple of months and wake up in the same bed, and it's really good.
Do you go watch baseball in Puerto Rico or attend games?
Well, I watch like the World Series or like the final. I'm not a big season guy. I'm not watching too much, but once in a while I'll watch.
One of the most interesting aspects of your career from a Chicago fan's point of view is you played for the Cubs and the White Sox.
Yeah. Like I said, any time that I had an opportunity to be in Chicago, I take it because my daughters they were born here, they grew up here. Actually, they were born in Puerto Rico, but I was here. I was living here 8 months, so they were out here with me, the whole time. So it's a very special place to me because I grew up here as a player, professional, and major leaguer. So it's really special to me just to be here in Chicago.
Us fans get pretty excited for Cubs Sox head to head. Little extra oomph for players too, or is it not as built up as much as
you feel it. You feel it. As a player, you don't have it. That's what the fans give you. So when we're out there, we know it's whatever, but it's more like the fans. But you start, with the cheers and the homers and the RBIs. You start listening to the cheers. You kind of get poised by it. It's like, okay, they feel it. We kind of feel what you're giving us. So okay, we're on it. We're on the same wave.
I was reading an article this week, preparing to sit down with you, and it was Forbes magazine put it out. Ryan Davis, a sports contributor for them, ranked you as one of the 10 greatest Cubs of the last 10 years.
That's an honor.
I don't know if you knew that, but what a compliment.
Yeah, I read that, and actually my mom told me about that. I was like, Mom, I haven't been playing, a couple of years. Just chill out. She was like, No, this is cool. I read it, and it was good. It was good to see that and see that the appreciation. Although I haven't been here for a few years, it's good to be kind of like recognized like that. It's humbling as well too.
Now that you're done playing, if you could go back and talk to Geovany Soto in 2001, you've been through it all, you've had success. What would you tell you as an 18-year-old kid? A
lot of times I put a lot of pressure on my own self. I just be like, hey man, chill out. It's okay. You work hard. You do all this stuff, and just let the chips fall where they may. 'Cause I always try to control stuff that maybe it wasn't in my control, or do stuff extra because I felt like I was being negligent with my job, and I've always wanted to work super hard. So I'm always like have that comfort that I've done everything, or it's never enough. So if I talk to myself, I'd be like, hey man, just work hard, but chill out.
Can we do some quick fun rapid fire to finish it up here? If you had to choose, would you be fully gray or bald?
Bald.
Bald?
Yeah.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Extroverted. I sleep a lot. I'm Puerto Rican.
How many books did you read last year?
1.
What was it?
The Secret.
Enjoyed it?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It was pretty cool. It was. I just saw like on TV. I saw like they were promoting like a movie. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I got the book. I read it. But yeah, my daughter reads. She's read like 55 books only last year, and she's like, how many books have you read, Dad? I'm like, 1. So making fun of me.
What's the most beneficial advice that you ever received, and who was it from?
I got a lot of advice from Pudge when we played in the 2009 World Baseball Classic. He told me that it goes fast, enjoy it, work hard, and don't let it go. Don't let anybody take it away from you. You fight for your survival in the game and all that stuff.
Gio, happy early birthday! Thank you again for doing
so much.
this. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. Yeah.
Thank you. To see more of my interviews with former Chicago Cubs and other great Cubs content, be sure to subscribe to the Chicago Cubs YouTube page.